Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and I just found out that SvelteKit has finally been released. Now, if you're not familiar with the story of SvelteKit, let's just start like from the beginning. There is the framework of Svelte. Svelte is a front-end framework, kind of competing against like Vue, React, Angular. Oh, traffic outside. Okay, but it's competing against Angular, React, all those frameworks. And basically what Svelte does is very different than those. When you use Angular, React, or Vue, you're shipping a runtime, meaning there's actually like this big blotch of code that has to be there to do all the React, Angular, Vue stuff in the front end. So it's not only are you shipping the code that you wrote for your application, but you're also shipping all the original like Vue code, whatnot. So you end up adding this extra bundle chunk of code to your bundle. Okay, and again, that matters because the more code they have to download up front, the longer that initial load time is. But also, a lot of those frameworks use a virtual DOM. The way they do that whole reactivity is they generally have they monitor for like changes to. In React, it's referred to as your state. In Vue, it's your data. In Angular, it's just stuff in your class that belongs to that particular component. But once your data changes, it does a comparison of sort of like what would be the new thing that's rendered versus the old thing that's rendered. Because in those frameworks, they're just going to re-render the whole component. So they determine, okay, hey, does something change in this component that we need to re-render the whole component? If not. Now, in Svelte and SolidJS kind of implemented this idea too, SolidJS being even newer. Basically what they do is they provide you with a compiler. So essentially you don't have to ship a Svelte runtime. It just compiles the code down to normal HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so basically you're shipping a lot less code, a lot faster up front, but also as far as reactivity goes, it doesn't have to do this virtual DOM comparison. Because essentially it's not linking a whole component. There's not a whole component that's linked to basically different expressions are reactive. And only those reactive expressions, they'll listen just for the update of that particular piece of data, and only those pieces of your UI update. And it's able to build all that logic based on the way your code's written when it compiles it. So it's just using normal HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And again, you don't need to do this constant comparison because it's not like, hey, if I basically, because in React, like if you made a change of state in like your app component, it rebuilds your entire application if there wasn't a virtual DOM, which would be very inefficient. In Svelte, it doesn't really matter where the change is, what the state is changed, because the things where that state is used are the only things that are listening for that piece of like data to change. And because of its compilation process, it can pull this off. SolidJS again does this too. So if you like the React syntax, but you want the benefits of Svelte, there's SolidJS. But SvelteKit has a pretty awesome syntax as it out of the box. So originally they created something called Sapper, which stands for like the Svelte App Maker, and that was like their version of like Next.js. So it had like the server-side rendering and all the static site rendering. But what happened is that as time went on, there's changes they wanted to make. The Sapper code base kind of got a little bloated and a little hard, unwieldy. So instead of re-editing Sapper and continuing to build on Sapper, they just retired any additional work on Sapper. You can still use the old Sapper if you want, but not really necessary anymore because now they finally released SvelteKit, which is the replacement of Sapper. It's a new code base that uses Vite as the bundler, all sorts of stuff. So you can do like static site generation, server-side rendering, all the things that you could do in Sapper, with all the beauty of Svelte in this nice new kit. Okay, so this is essentially supposed to be like, in the way that like Next is becoming more like the way you build React apps, SvelteKit is meant to be as the way you build Svelte apps. Okay, so there's like the core like Svelte framework, but this gives you sort of a more robust, more things built on top of it. Okay, so let's take this out for a spin. Okay, so basically create a Svelte app. We're gonna do Svelte at next app. Okay, so they're just gonna make this like the default. Interesting. Because that's what's implied by saying, hey, npm init svelte. That's telling me that this is just going to be the default way. And that's different. That's actually another big difference. They're actually creating like a create script. In the past, like if I go over this svelte.dev, they just use npx, which I think is also created by the creator of Svelte, who's also the creator of Rollup and a few other things. But you see, use this tool npx, or not npx, but npx dgit, and dgit is this library created by the creator of Svelte and Rollup. That what it does, it'll clone a GitHub library without leaving like a repo behind. I love dgit, super awesome. Okay, but instead of doing that, they're actually creating their own startup script, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's that I'm noticing right off the top. That's different. Okay, so let's see how this goes. Okay, I'll hit paste. Okay, and it's running the thing. Oh, it threw an error. Import fs. Oh, I think I know why. Okay, I need to switch back to npm. I have an older version of Node active right now because I'm working on some Gatsby project that requires where Gatsby image sharp, which depends on sharp, needs an older version of Node to compile successfully. That was fun to figure out. Okay, Node -- version. Let me just see. Yeah, I'm on 12.8. I need to get back to 16. So let me see here. What's it? Nvm -- help. I have to remember what is the command to switch. Nvm use. Okay, so nvm use system, because that's where I have the newer version. Okay, yep. Okay, cool. So let's go back and run that command. Npm init svelte. Yes, I would. Cool. And now let's see. If you encounter a problem, open an issue. If none exists, let's use the skeleton project. Let's not use TypeScript in this go around. Sure, we'll have ESLint. Yes, for prettier. Oh, my noisy neighborhood. Although soon I'll be moving to Florida into a nice little quiet nook, so my videos should be getting a lot quieter a lot sooner. Okay, so cd into this my app folder. Okay, and let's do an npm install. So we still have to do an npm install to install the libraries. Okay, get init, get add. Well, that's just if you want to like do a git repo. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. But then it would be npm run dev. Okay, I like that flow. Okay, so we have an app running on localhost 3000. So let's go check it out. Okay, so there's the deal. Okay, I'm gonna open up the docs, but actually the first thing we can kind of just get out of the way. This is gonna work like Next, where it has file-based routing. So right here, I can go to in here and just make files, Svelte files, and then they're gonna be pages. So if I go here and I say new file, cheese.svelte, and I'm just gonna say h1 cheese. Okay, and if you ever wonder why I use cheese as my default variable, I mean, I'm actually not that big of a cheese eater, but the reason is just because like oftentimes people are unclear on like which things are like language keywords versus like variables that you could just arbitrarily name whatever you want. So I always use the example of cheese because you know that's not a reserved keyword in any language. It's like it's just not built into it. There's no reason for that. So you know if I can call it cheese, you can call it whatever you want. Okay, so now that that's rebuilt, let's try here. I should be able to go to /cheese here. And there you go, cheese. And again, I love this Svelte syntax. Like this is all I have to write versus like Next, where you have to like export default and write a whole component, a whole function and all that. Like this, I can just do this and it works. Okay. Now let's see here. I should have all the other features like of Next, so I should be able to set up params. Let's look at the docs and how you do that here. I imagine it's going to be pretty similar. Which one is this? This is Svelte. I'm going to go with SvelteKit. Let's go to the docs. Routing, endpoints. Endpoints are functions corresponding. Okay. So import DB, export async function. Okay, so that's for like, we'll come back to that. Okay, I get that. Let's see here, pages. But how do we do params? Params, rest parameters, follow through routes, loading, input page, output, hooks, handle modules. Let's see here. Okay, so here's a param, so that's just gonna be like next. We put in square brackets. Okay. And then we get that in a load function. So let's take a look at how that works. A component that defines a page or layout can be export a load function that runs before the component is created. So type load. Well, that's just a typing. But here's an example. Script. Export async module function load. Page fetch session context. URL page params.slug. Okay, so that's where that's coming from. Any other details? Okay, so let's try that out. So I will make a new file and we'll just call it like param.svelte. Okay, we'll put I'll do the whole script context equals module as I saw in there, so that way I can use like module syntax. I'm assuming that's the reason for that. And then I'll just put like h1, and we'll just call this like param. So we'll eventually make a variable called param. Okay, and let me just go back and read this again. So we're going to export an async function called load, and the idea is that that runs before the load. So export async function load, and I'm just going to write stuff. Instead of destructuring it, I just want to examine it. Okay, and I want to console.log stuff because I want to see what this is. Okay, and then what I want to do is say, I'll declare a variable up here beforehand. Let param, is that what I called it? Param, yep, I called it param. Let param, and then here we'll say param equals, and let's see what we saw over here. Page.params. Okay. They told me what the route was, but I guess like that's the slug part. So let's try that out. Page stuff dot page dot params dot param, because we called it param right here, so that should be the name of it. Okay, so let's try that out. So we'll go to /bread. So theoretically, if I did that right, I should see bread. No, not found. Bread. So let's see here. Page. Okay, so I did find it. Page. Params. Param. Bread. So what am I missing? Let me go back and take a look at the docs. Return props. Const URL. .json, wait, fetch .url, if res.ok, return props. Let's see, load function is similar to get static props, actually except that it runs both on the server and the client. If load returns nothing, we'll fall through to other routes, return until something responds. Load if res.ok. Wait, fetch URL. What's URL? Slug. Interesting. Okay, I'm trying to see if I understand. A component that defines a page or a layout can export a load function that runs before the component is created. The function runs both during server-side and allows you to get data for a page without, for example, showing a loading spinner and fetching data on mount. Our example block page must contain a load function like the following. Note the context module. This is necessary because load runs before the component is rendered. Okay, I got that. But it needs to return. Okay, so let's just do this. So instead, we will return. And it says return props. So that means I need to export let param, because that's how you define props in Svelte. So props and then inside of props, we will have a property called props, and in there we'll have a property called param that equals stuff.page.params.param. Okay, let me just make sure that I got that straight. Return props. Okay, that's fine. So then theoretically, this is going to be my props object coming into it, which means this will receive that prop, and then that should all work. So let's double check. It's getting the right page, but it's not getting the param. Let's see here. Param is undefined. Where is that going to? Status. Find that page. It is important to load input page. If the load function returns a props object, the props will be passed to the component when it is rendered. And it does return props. Just double check that I make sure I did that right. So return props. And then that's an object. That's what we did. Props param. Well, let me just shut this off and turn this back on in case maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I don't need to define it. Maybe that's the deal. It's not the maybe it's not the typical. See now that warning goes away. Param is not defined. Consider adding a script block with export let param, but I did do that. Okay, and then you gave me a different warning. Export let param. Okay. Yep. Okay, and let's see here. Param file has unused export property param. If it is external reference only, please consider using export const param. Maybe that's what I need to do? Const? Let's just go back to let. Is there something like a props? Maybe it magically creates this props.param. I will figure this out. So that way you don't have to figure it out later. But I mean, basically the idea is like this. So fetch. Actually, I gave a more full example when it is rendered. Hooks. Do you need a special hook? Here we go. Local user. Handle. Pass. Okay, well, you guys get the idea. Somewhere in there, I would be able to do the thing. Just warehouse it, passing that param return props param. Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, but other cool things you can do endpoints. Okay, so basically here what you can do is you can actually write like API backend API points. All you have to do is end the route in JSON.js. So this allows you to write like a backend point, and you can write a function like get. Okay, so export async get. This select parameter becomes available in this file, which means like I think this would be used on a get route, and then we can get any kind of params. Okay, and then you can go get any data you need to get as JSON. Okay, and we can see, and then here this just allows you to kind of see what is the deal here. So type request equals, and which could be represented by an endpoint. I'd have to go read that a little bit deeper to see what's going on there. But essentially what you can do is you can make basically API endpoints through that. And then again, you can do static rendering or server-side rendering. And I know you just have to do that in a config file somewhere. But overall, it looks like there's a lot of cool stuff here. And I'm glad that it's finally released. I definitely am looking forward to playing with this a little bit more. I will I'll do another video as I get more acquainted with it later on, but just figured like you have a chance to kind of see me kind of play with it a little bit and get an idea where things are at. But I'll see y'all later.